There is a house on a cliff in Rhode Island, 70 rooms, marble from Italy, limestone from France, platinum on the walls. It cost $7 million to build in 1895, over $200 million today. It was designed to be fireproof, earthquake-proof, built to outlast everything, and it did outlast everything. The family, the fortune, the world it was built for. The house is still standing, empty, a museum. Strangers walk through it every day. They take photographs. They marvel at the excess. They leave. This is not a story about beauty or architecture. This is a story about a man who built a fortress against irrelevance and discovered that survival is not the same as meaning. This is about what happens when you build something that cannot be destroyed but also cannot be loved. The house stands, the family is gone, and that is the problem. Cornelius Vanderbilt II was born into wealth in 1843. His grandfather, the Commodore, built the fortune: railroads, steamships, ruthless business. By the time Cornelius was old enough to understand money, his family had more of it than almost anyone in America. But Cornelius was not the Commodore. He was the grandson, the inheritor, the man who received everything and built nothing. He spent his entire life managing a fortune someone else created. He worked, he expanded the railroads, he was competent, responsible, but he was not a creator, he was a maintainer. And maintaining is not the same as building. Everyone knew that. His family knew it, society knew it, and Cornelius knew it. He married Alice Gwynn in 1867, a good match, old money family, appropriate. They had 7 children. They lived well. They had everything money could buy. But in the world Cornelius inhabited, having everything was not enough. You had to be seen having more than everyone else. By the 1880s, the Vanderbilt family was fracturing into competition. Cornelius's younger brothers and sisters were building palaces. William Kissam built a Gothic chateau on Fifth Avenue. His wife Alva threw a costume ball that cost $250,000 and changed New York society overnight. Frederick built his own mansion. George started planning Biltmore, which would become the largest private home in America. Everyone was building, everyone was competing, and they were all competing with each other. Cornelius had a house in New York, 1 West 57th Street, the largest private residence in the city, 154 rooms. He had already proven himself there. But New York was not enough, because in the summer, the wealthy left New York. They went to Newport, Rhode Island. Newport was where status was performed, where society gathered, where competition happened in public. And in Newport, Cornelius needed something that would end all competition. Something that would make it clear once and for all that he was the head of the family, the most important Vanderbilt, the one who mattered most. So he decided to build the Breakers. There was already a house on the property, a wooden mansion called the Breakers, built in the 1870s. Cornelius bought it in 1885. It was large, comfortable, suitable. But in 1892 it burned down. A fire started in the basement. The entire structure was gone in hours. Cornelius was in New York when it happened. He received word by telegram. The house was a total loss. And instead of grief, he felt something else. Opportunity. Because now he could build something that would never burn. Something that would never fail. Something permanent. He hired Richard Morris Hunt, the most famous architect in America, the man who designed the base of the Statue of Liberty, the man every wealthy family wanted. Hunt had already designed the Vanderbilt Chateau on Fifth Avenue. He understood what the family needed, not homes, monuments. Cornelius gave Hunt a simple instruction: build something that cannot be destroyed. Hunt designed a palace modelled after Italian Renaissance villas, specifically the palaces of Genoa and Turin. 70 rooms, 4 stories, steel frame construction, fireproof. The exterior would be limestone and brick, no wood on the outside. The interior would be marble, stone, and fireproof materials wherever possible. The house would sit on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. 13 acres of land. The location was dramatic, exposed. The house would face the ocean like a fortress, like it was daring the elements to try. Construction began in 1893. 2,000 workers, many of them brought from Europe, Italian stonemasons, French craftsmen, artists who specialised in ceiling murals and decorative plasterwork, the best, the most expensive, the most skilled. The materials came from around the world: limestone from Caen, France, marble from Italy and Africa, columns of alabaster. The ceiling of the music room covered in platinum leaf, not gold, platinum. Because platinum does not tarnish. Platinum lasts forever. The house took 2 years to build, fast for something so large. Cornelius wanted it done quickly. He wanted to use it. He wanted society to see it. The entrance was designed to overwhelm, a massive doorway of oak and iron. You stepped inside and immediately faced the Great Hall, 2 stories tall, walls of Caen stone, columns of marble, a painted ceiling. The space was designed to make visitors understand their place. Small, insignificant. The house was in control. Beyond the Great Hall, the other rooms radiated outward. The music room, the billiard room, the library, the morning room, the dining room. Each one more elaborate than the last. Each one filled with materials that cost fortunes. Each one designed not for comfort but for display. The dining room could seat 34 guests. The table was always set as if dinner might happen at any moment. Crystal, silver, china imported from Europe. The ceiling was painted to look like sky. Cherubs and clouds. The chandelier weighed a ton. Literally. A ton of crystal hanging from the ceiling. But no one lived there. Not really. The house was used for 8 weeks in the summer. That was it. The rest of the year it sat empty, maintained by a staff, heated, cleaned, preserved, waiting for the family to return. Cornelius and Alice had 7 children, but by the time the Breakers was finished, the children were growing up, getting married, moving away. The house was built for a large family, but the family was already leaving. The Breakers opened in 1895. Cornelius invited society. He hosted dinners, parties. He showed them what he had built, and they were impressed. They had to be. There was nothing to compare it to. Even among the other Newport cottages, the Breakers was different. Larger, more expensive, more intimidating. But here is what no one said out loud. The house felt wrong. It was too much, too big, too cold. The rooms echoed. The marble made every sound sharp and harsh. Conversations bounced off walls. The house was beautiful, but it was not comfortable. It was a palace. And palaces are not made for living. Cornelius spent summers there. He walked the grounds. He sat in the library. He hosted dinners. But he was not a man who relaxed. He was the head of the Vanderbilt family. He ran the railroads. He managed investments. He worked constantly. Even at the Breakers, he worked. Alice tried to make it feel like home. She chose furniture. She arranged flowers. She made sure the staff knew what to do. But you cannot make a palace feel like home. The scale is wrong. The materials are wrong. The purpose is wrong. The house was not built for a family. It was built to prove something. And once you have proven it, what then? Cornelius had a stroke in 1896. Just 1 year after the Breakers was finished. He was 53 years old. The stroke left him partially paralyzed. He could not work the way he had before. He spent more time at the Breakers, sitting, resting, watching the ocean. He had another stroke in 1899. This one was worse. He died on September the 12th, 1899. He was 56 years old. He had owned the Breakers for 4 years. He had spent perhaps 6 months actually living there. The house he built to last forever outlived him by 4 years. Alice inherited the Breakers. She lived there for the rest of her life. Summers in Newport, winters in New York, the same pattern, the same routine. But the world was changing around her. The Gilded Age was ending. The excess that defined the 1890s was beginning to feel obscene. Wealth was still celebrated, but it was supposed to be quieter, more tasteful. The giant Newport cottages were starting to feel like embarrassments. And there were new problems: income taxes, estate taxes. The government wanted its share. Every time a Vanderbilt died, the fortune shrank. Taxes, legal fees, division among heirs. The money that seemed infinite was not. Maintaining the Breakers cost a fortune, not just the staff. The heating bills, the property taxes, the constant repairs, marble cracks, limestone erodes. Platinum does not tarnish, but everything around it does. The house required constant attention, constant money. Alice could afford it. Barely. But she was spending the fortune faster than it could regenerate. The railroads were still profitable. But the family was pulling money out. building more mansions, throwing more parties, living beyond even their enormous means. By the 1920s, the Vanderbilt fortune was in trouble, not gone, but shrinking. And the heirs were realizing that the palaces were not assets, they were liabilities. Alice died in 1934. She had lived at the Breakers for 35 years. She left the house to her daughter Gladys. But Gladys did not want it. She had her own home, her own life. The Breakers was an inheritance she could not refuse but also could not afford. The house required a staff of 30 people to maintain, just to keep it from falling apart. The heating costs in winter were astronomical. The property taxes kept rising, and the house was only used a few weeks a year. Gladys tried to keep it. She paid the bills, she maintained the staff. But by the 1940s, it was clear this could not continue. The fortune was not what it had been. The railroads had been sold. The investments were shrinking. The Vanderbilt name still meant something, but it did not mean money anymore. In 1948, Gladys made a decision. She leased the Breakers to the Preservation Society of Newport County for $1 a year. The society would maintain it, open it to tourists, charge admission. The revenue would go toward preservation. Gladys still owned it, but she gave up control. She gave up the house her father built to prove the family's permanence. She gave it to strangers. In 1972, she sold it to the Preservation Society outright for $365,000, a fraction of what it cost to build. The house that was supposed to last forever, the house that was supposed to prove the Vanderbilt name would never fade. Sold to become a museum. The Breakers is still standing, you can visit it today, buy a ticket, walk through the rooms, stand in the Great Hall, look up at the painted ceiling, touch the marble columns, walk out onto the terrace and look at the ocean. Hundreds of thousands of people visit every year. They take photographs, they post them online, they talk about how beautiful it is, how impressive, how unimaginable that people once lived like this. But no one lives like this anymore. The house survived, but the world it was built for did not. The Breakers was designed to be fireproof, and it is. There has never been another fire. The house was built with steel and stone and materials that do not burn. Cornelius succeeded. He built something that cannot be destroyed by fire. But fire was not the problem. The problem was time. The problem was change. The problem was that the world moved on, society moved on, wealth moved on, the Vanderbilt fortune moved on. Everything moved on except the house. The Breakers sits on its cliff, exactly as it was built, preserved perfectly, maintained obsessively, and it means nothing. It is beautiful. It is impressive. It is empty. Walk through the Breakers today. Start in the Great Hall. Look at the cornstone walls, the marble columns, the painted ceiling, the space designed to make you feel small. And it works. You do feel small. The room is overwhelming, but not in the way it was intended. You feel small because the room makes you understand how desperately someone wanted to feel big, how much money was spent, how much effort, how much need. The room is not impressive. It is sad. Move to the dining room. The table set for 34 guests, the chandelier hanging overhead, the painted ceiling, the platinum leaf. Imagine sitting here. Imagine eating dinner in this room with 33 other people at a table so long you cannot hear the person at the other end. Imagine trying to have a conversation, trying to laugh, trying to feel comfortable. You cannot. The room does not allow it. The room is not for people, it is for performance. Walk upstairs, the bedrooms are smaller, more human scale, but even here the materials are excessive. Marble bathrooms, silk wallpaper, furniture that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The bedrooms where Cornelius and Alice slept, the rooms where they tried to rest, to be private, to escape. But you cannot escape in a palace. The palace follows you into every room, the weight of it, the cost of it, the meaning of it. Stand on the terrace, look out at the Atlantic Ocean. The view is beautiful. The ocean is indifferent. It was here before the Breakers. It will be here after. The waves hit the rocks the same way they did 1,000 years ago. The same way they will 1,000 years from now. Cornelius built the Breakers to face the ocean, to stand against it, to prove that wealth could control nature, could control time, could control everything. But the ocean does not care. The ocean does not notice. The house on the cliff is nothing to the ocean. A momentary structure. A brief arrangement of stone and metal that will eventually fall. Not yet, but eventually. The breakers is maintained perfectly. Every crack is repaired. Every surface is cleaned. The Preservation Society spends millions keeping it exactly as it was. Frozen in 1895, preserved like a specimen, like a body in formaldehyde. But preservation is not life. The house is not alive. It is not used. It is not needed. It exists because we have decided it should, but we could decide otherwise. And one day we will. The breakers will stand as long as someone is willing to pay to keep it standing, as long as tourists keep buying tickets, as long as the preservation grants keep coming, as long as we collectively agree that this house matters. But what happens when we stop agreeing? What happens when the tourists stop coming? What happens when the money runs out? What happens when we collectively decide that a 70-room palace built by a railroad baron is not worth preserving? The house will fall, not quickly, slowly, the way all things fall when no one is maintaining them. The roof will leak. Water will seep in. The painted ceilings will stain and crack. The marble will discolour. The platinum will remain perfect, but everything around it will decay. And then one day, someone will decide it costs too much to save, and it will be demolished, or left to collapse, and the ocean will keep hitting the rocks, and the cliff will still be there, and the house will be gone. Just like the family, just like the fortune, just like everything Cornelius built it to protect. The irony is that the breaker survived not because it was strong, not because it was fireproof, not because it was built to last. It survived because it failed. It failed to be a home. It failed to house a family. It failed to provide comfort. It failed to create continuity. It failed at everything it was built to do. And that failure made it valuable. Because once it was empty, once the family was gone, once it was clear that no one could live here, it became something else. A museum, a curiosity, a monument to excess. If the breakers had succeeded as a home, it would have been demolished like the Fifth Avenue mansions. Too expensive, too outdated, too embarrassing. The family would have torn it down themselves. But because it failed, because it was too extreme to be anything but a palace, it was preserved. The excess that made it unlivable made it worth saving. The very qualities that drove the family away made tourists want to visit. The house survived by becoming its opposite. It was built as a private fortress. It became a public museum. It was built to exclude. It now welcomes hundreds of thousands. It was built to prove permanence. It now proves impermanence. Cornelius built the breakers to control his legacy, to ensure the Vanderbilt name would be remembered, to prove that wealth could create permanence, and he succeeded. The Vanderbilt name is remembered because of the breakers, but not in the way he intended. We remember the Vanderbilts as the family that built too much, spent too much, wanted too much. The family that built palaces they could not sustain. The family that proved that wealth is temporary and monuments are expensive. The breakers is a memorial, but not to success, to excess, to the belief that money could buy immortality, to the idea that building something fireproof meant building something eternal. Cornelius wanted to build something that could not be destroyed. He succeeded. The breakers cannot be destroyed, because it is already gone, not physically, but spiritually, emotionally, culturally. The building stands, but what it represented is gone. The world that made sense of it is gone. The values that created it are gone. The family that filled it is gone. The house is empty, and it was always empty. That was the secret. From the beginning. The day it was finished. The day Cornelius walked through the Great Hall for the first time, it was empty then too. Because you cannot live in a monument. You can only visit. The breaker stands, the ocean continues, time moves forward, and the house waits. Frozen, perfect, irrelevant. A palace built to last forever that lasted too long. The family is gone, the fortune is gone, the world is gone. But the house remains, not because it was strong, because it was empty. And emptiness, it turns out, is the only thing that lasts.